Welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to try to keep it quick and just give an overarching message of the Bible. The big idea of the Bible is the story of God saving his people. That's the message. It's the story of God saving his people. And it happens by the work of Jesus Christ. But all the different genres, all the books, all the stories, the laws, the genealogies, the symbols, the illustrations, the apocalyptic literature, the long letters, the short letters, they all come together over the 66 books and over 40 authors and over 1,500 years of authorship to tell one coherent story of God coming for his people, saving fallen man by his effort, by his work. And so that's it. Um, Things to keep in mind, I think, are helpful to go along with that are what it's not about. It's not science fiction. Some may think that it's because some of the stories are crazy and there's angels and demons and different dimensions, and which is all true. That it's some sort of not like fictitious story or myth. And I don't mean just the classical definition of myth, but myth as in some false made up story. It's not. It's true, but it does have what we would call in maybe the movie industry science fiction type parts. There are angels, there are demons, there are multi dimensions, there are spirit beings. There's people that are raised from the dead. God Himself is alien to this world. The old timers used to call our righteousness, for example, when expressed in theology, of the kind of righteousness we have is not of ourselves, but it's an alien righteousness imputed to us, pressed upon us, given to us, credited to us by an, an alien entity that is God. And that just simply means not of this world. Like Jesus said, my kingdom is not of this world. And it isn't. The righteousness that we have, the work that was accomplished in our place, the power for which that came from God. And He is not of this world. And so it does have that aspect, but it isn't science fiction. It's not sociology, studying peoples and their migrations and lineages, although it has those elements. It's not science. It's not trying to make scientists happy by how it explains things. It's just God telling us a story the way He wanted to reveal Himself and His character, so we would know what kind of God He was, what our plight was as humans, and the story of His salvation. It's not meant to be a history book. It's got history in it, but it isn't the point. The point isn't to, you know, chop up and cut up history and have all these, critical insights into when things happen and try to get to the bottom of all the timelines, although that's super important. And a lot of people have done good work there. It's not what we go there for. This one's important. It's not a book on moral living. Um, People think like, I have to read the Bible more to be a better person. That's a common thought process. I had it for most of my life, and it's not true. If anything, what we see in the Bible shows us that in reading the Bible, the morality that's required of man is impossible. And whether it's the Sermon on the Mount or the law of God given to Moses in on the stone tablets, it shows us that moral living is impossible. We are impossible. Uh, it is impossible, rather, to live a perfect moral life. It is a standard. It shows us who God is. It shows us what kind of God we have, and it's a mirror that shows us how far we fall short. But it's not for that. It's not to get us to live better. It's not a self help book. It's not a book to, after reading it for a year or 10 years, that we have increasingly become a better version of ourselves. That's related to moral living. We don't get better versions of ourselves. We believe in sanctification, but prior to salvation, essentially, we can't do anything. Like it says in the Bible that without faith, it's impossible to please God, and without Jesus's righteousness, His work on the cross, His perfect performance in our place, given to us by a free gift of grace, um, we we we're lost. We're completely separated. It's only after that happens that we can start to change after we have the Holy Spirit, have been born again, that we then walk a new life over time where we become more conformed to the image of Christ. But it's not to become a better version of ourselves. Ourselves have died with Christ on the cross. And like Paul says, I have been crucified with Christ. It's no longer I who live. So all those versions and tiers you think that we're going to clean up of ourselves or level up, that's self-help, and that's a rabbit hole that a lot of people go down, and I went down that for years, of whether it's TED Talks or self-help books or wellness books. They all have great principles in them, based many off the Bible, but they are of no help with the biggest problem we have, which is salvation. It's moving on. The Bible's not a theology book. We aren't to go to the Bible just to learn about God. We come and meet God in His Word. We meet Him by learning all the stories and the overarching, again, message, which is God saving His people. It's through that, like I mentioned in a previous video, that the Bible becomes a window, not a painting. A window to look through, not to analyze as a painting and the beauty of it, but to look through this beautiful painting to the God that created it, the God that gave it to us, to show, through which He shows us Himself and this plan of salvation for His people, so that we would come to believe, so that His people would receive it. Finally, it's not a book to conquer the world. You can, by books like Proverbs, learn to live a wise life and avoid being foolish, and how to save money and win friends and influence people, like that famous book is about. But again, like that book, that's good temporal stuff to know and to learn, and even unbelievers can learn a lot from books like that on how to win friends and influence people. But that's not what the Bible is. It's again all about God, and it's all about His way of salvation, and increasing the prosperity or abundance or health of our life here is good. But if you consider eternity, that we live eternally somewhere, separated from God in hell or with God in paradise with Him, then the life that we have here in comparison is like negligible in time. So why strive after the 5 minutes we all have on earth to level up or be the best version of ourselves, when humbling ourselves and seeing the message of God of salvation in Christ is infinitely a better investment, and has infinite consequences. And so I'll close with just a very quick outline of this message weaved throughout the Bible, this message of salvation, of God saving His people. In Genesis 1 and 2, it talks about God being the creator, that He is the creator of all things, spiritual beings in the heavens, humans on the earth, all of the planets, the stars, the cosmos. God is the creator of all things. He stands apart from His creation. He is not one with His creation in that He is omnipresent, but He is not part of it. And this is a very crucial doctrine of Christianity, a very crucial teaching, because it stands up against many of the other religions of the world, which say that God is like part of nature, part of creation, and He is not. He is the creator. He is the potter to the clay. He is the author to the book. He is not in the book. He wrote the book. He stands out of the book, and this is His creation. And very important to remember, because it really magnifies the beauty of what He does at the cross when He becomes, or in His first coming, when He becomes a man. By putting on flesh, He enters into His creation. He puts on flesh and enters into His created order to achieve the life for man in His place that we didn't do, that we couldn't do, that Adam failed and all of his legacy failed. He actually came and put on flesh to accomplish salvation for us, not to show us how to do it and to follow me in my moral teachings, but to actually do it for us, because we couldn't do it for ourselves. We couldn't help ourselves. Self-help was the problem. We tried to do it and we couldn't. And He is the solution by His work. And so He enters in with His incarnation and the death on the cross, and then his resurrection, he returns to his place, and those who believe in him, who believe that story, are grafted into him. This is the wild thing, is the beauty of the gospel, is that we actually become one with the Creator by faith, in relationship with him again. And there's just I'll give one example of in the New Testament of a very brief overview of the message of the Bible, and it comes in Colossians 1, starting in verse 15. It says, he, talking about Jesus, is the invisible, or I'm sorry, he is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For by him all things were created, in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. And he is before all things, and in him all things hold together. This is just the supremacy and preeminence of Christ here. How he created everything. He was before everything, outside of everything. And by him, for him, through him, and for him were all things created. Verse 18 says, and he is the head of the body, the church. He is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in everything he might be preeminent. For in him what all the fullness of God was pleased to dwell, to come for us on the cross, in verse 20. And through him to reconcile to himself all things, whether on earth or in heaven, making peace by the blood of his cross. So what we see there in Colossians 1, written by Paul, is just a very quick and clear presentation of how he saw the arc of this story be told, of God saving his people by the work of Christ. I hope this helps.